So one of the biggest fears for people seems to be the fear of what other people think. The fear of being judged, the fear of what the world may say. And this fear has been the biggest block to people achieving their desires, their dreams, pursuing what they want to do. And it keeps people very scared, in a narrow state of mind, trapped and imprisoned, just because of this one fear, which is really just a thought. And often it's just a conditioned thought. And it's interesting because I was speaking to a friend and he was mentioning a news article that he read. And in this article, the people who wrote this article were interviewing people that were dying, and they asked them, what do they wish they'd done differently? And one guy said, he wished he had been true to himself. He wished he'd been true to himself. And the question is, are you going to be true to yourself? Or are you going to be that guy looking back saying, well, I wish I'd have been true to myself, but I didn't. And I probably didn't achieve a lot in my life that I felt I could achieve. I didn't experience a lot what I could have experienced because of that fear of what other people think and because I wasn't true to myself. You see, overcoming the fear of what people think comes from having certain realizations about reality and seeing the bigger picture of things. First of all, there are 7 and odd billion people on this planet, all with a completely different perception of the world. No perception identical to the other. There'd be slight differences. Nobody sees the world in exactly the same way. Everybody looks at it through a unique perception. So out of those 7 billion different perceptions, which one's right? Is my perception right? Somebody else's perception right? Is the dog's perception right? Is the cat's perception right? You know, so all that matters is your perception. All that matters for you is your experience. If you try and live your life through other people's eyes, then you're going to be disappointed every time. And this reminds me of a Sufi story. And there was a father and his son, and they were walking with their donkey, and they were heading to town. And they walked past a couple of men, and one of the men chuckled and said, "You fool, if a donkey's not to ride upon, then what is it for?" So the man, hearing that, he suddenly climbed upon his donkey, and the boy walked at the side of the donkey, and they carried on their way. And then they passed a group of women, and one of the women said, "Look at that rotten man letting his son walk while he rides the donkey." So the man, now hearing this, jumped off the donkey and put his son on the donkey. And then they walked past 2 men, and one of the men said, "Look at that young boy, fit and healthy, and he's letting his dad walk while he's riding on the donkey." And so the man, hearing that, now he climbed on the donkey with his son, so they were both on together. And so they walked past another group of men, and one of the men said, "Look at that poor donkey with 2 people on its back. How cruel is that?" And so the man now was distraught, and he didn't know what to do. So he got off the donkey, took his son off the donkey, and all of a sudden he thought, right. He went and got a big long pole, he tied the donkey's legs to the pole, and he put it up on his shoulder, and the son put the other end up on his shoulder, and now they walked with the donkey upside down tied to the pole. and they walked over a bridge, and all of a sudden the donkey kicked out and one of its legs got free from the rope, and then the son dropped his end of the pole, and before you know it, the donkey was in the river and it had drowned. And then there was an old man walking behind the son and father, and he said, "You fool." He said, "Please all, and you will please none." That's what people are trying to do on a daily basis. They're trying to please everybody else. Instead of trying to please everybody else, why don't you please yourself? As long as you do it in a conscious manner, and you follow your own path, and you do what feels right for you, and you're true to yourself, then why don't you please yourself? Stop trying to please others, because it'll never work, because you can never please everybody. Be nice to others, show compassion to others, be kind to others, but always be true to yourself first, and do that by being conscious and choosing the right path always for you, what's best for you and best for everybody in the long run also. That is the conscious way to live. And through that realization, don't be afraid of what other people think. They'll think one thing today, they'll think one thing tomorrow. And one other thing that sticks out in my mind, I remember seeing a program many years ago, and it was about death, and this guy was going into the graveyards, different graveyards, and he says, "Isn't it funny to think that on a long enough timeline, anything you ever did won't matter?" Now, to the ego, that seems like a very depressing thought, to think that anything it ever did doesn't matter. But to the one who is conscious, to the one who knows that they are beyond this reality, that they are infinite, it is extremely liberating.